Hello, my name is Joseph Loftus and I'm a member of the parish mission team of the Vincentian community.
And my name is Terry Kelleher and I too am a member of the parish mission team of the Vincentian community.
In these four podcasts, we will be exploring the Christmas story as they are told in the four Gospels. We're all familiar with the Christmas story, but actually, as we remember it, it is made up of different elements taken from some of the Gospels. And they're all different from what actually is written and is our idea of the Gospel, of the Christmas story itself. I will do a quick run through what the scripture says, and Terry will do a reflection on the same theme. To do a podcast on the infancy stories of Mark's Gospel, one could say is going to be a very short podcast because Mark says nothing concerning Jesus' birth, his childhood, or his activities prior to his baptism in the Jordan River. We all know the standard story of the arrival of Mary and Joseph in Bethlehem for a census. They get helped by an innkeeper. Jesus sleeps in a manger, shepherds visit, and later 3 wise men. It's all there in the classic chocolate box image. If you were a school teacher in need of characters for a Christmas play, you might add the story of the angel telling Mary that she was going to have a baby, and for drama that they fled to Egypt after the wise men had visited. However, the story as I just described it is recorded in no one gospel, and each gospel tells the story in a different way based on what the author wanted to say, the people to whom the author was writing, what they considered important, and what they knew. So I'm going to look at the Gospel of Mark and try and work out what image of Jesus he wanted to portray in his Gospel. The Gospel of Mark begins very bluntly. The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. This is no lily-livered Mark wondering if Jesus was the Son of God. This is the Son of God, the Messiah. There is a suggestion in the whole gospel that he was born of woman, so therefore there was a presumption of a birth. But it's told in a story about the family of Jesus coming looking for him and Mary being worried about him. In fact, in this gospel, Mary is given her name for the first time. Mark is in no doubt that this was a human being born of woman. Mark is no ghost. He is very rooted in a family network, but there are no baby photographs. This absence is remarkable because it's well established that the beliefs of the early Christians already had stories about the manner of Jesus' birth and the way that the birth was announced in advance. It's strange that he doesn't record them. But what he does, once we've had the baptism of Jesus in the Jordan, we go through what can only be a gallop to describe what this Jesus did. He's baptized, he's tempted, he chooses his disciples, he does miracles, he confronts the authorities, he confounds them with his own authority, until we get a climax in chapter 8, verse 27, when he appears to ask what seems like an innocuous question to his disciples, "And who do people say that I am?" The disciples kick for touch. They don't know what to say. But Peter shows himself to have leadership skills, and he comes back and says confidently, "You are the Christ. You are the Messiah." But there's a twist. Jesus accepts that Peter has got it right, but then tells him that this Messiah, that I am, is going to be a suffering Messiah, a Messiah who is destined to die a horrible death. The disciples, Peter included, can't really accept this, and Jesus rams the point home that this is what he's going to be. He's going to be the suffering servant. If to prove that, the next event in the story is the Transfiguration, where Jesus is presented to Peter, James, and John in all his glory, and a voice, echoing the voice first heard at the beginning of the Gospel, the voice of God comes down, and they hear him say, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him." So, Mark is at pains to allow us to know that Jesus, from down the road in Nazareth, with brothers and sisters and a mother going demented over the strange things he's doing, is in fact the Messiah, the Son of God. He chooses to use a different way of getting to that point rather than tell an infancy story or producing his birth record via genealogy. He spends 8 chapters telling us about the leading up to the dramatic revelation that Jesus is the Messiah. And then he is a different kind of Messiah, a Messiah who's going to suffer and to die. The rest of the gospel is a long lead up to Jerusalem, the crucifixion, the death, and the resurrection. Mark's Messiah has no chocolate box manger story, no star, no donkey, no shepherds. But even if it took 8 chapters to get there, he is shouting out loud and clear, "Indeed, this man, this Jesus from Nazareth, this child of the woman Mary, is indeed the Son of God."
It could be said that St. Mark's Gospel is his attempt to tell his audience in first century Rome, and as it transpired, many audiences since, that Jesus is the Messiah, but a Messiah who is the suffering servant. He is not a king in political terms, nor a revolutionary leader who liberates his people from the oppression of an occupying power. He's not a magician who pulls rabbits out of hats, but he has powers of curing and of healing. Mark required that his audience accept this understanding of the identity and mission of Jesus. Reflecting on this, what strikes me forcibly are the demands of this requirement. St. Mark has no origin or birth narrative for Jesus. This does not mean that St. Mark does not uphold the truth of the Incarnation, but rather the Jesus that St. Mark presents in this first Gospel to be written is a busy adult at the height of his vigor and physical powers. His identity, like his message, is very demanding. It is a challenge to be adult, that is, to believe in mysteries, not magic, to accept the inevitability of suffering and of death, but not to despair that death is the end of everything. Reading the first 9 chapters of this Gospel, I find myself drawn to the person and character of Peter. Peter, who makes the bold statement that you are the Christ of God, and in doing so lets all of us in on the messianic secret at the heart of the identity of Jesus. But Peter does not understand the import, the layers, and the nuances of what he has just announced. This Peter, who is reproached for his lack of understanding, whose faith is rewarded by the vision of the Transfiguration, but who again finds himself caught out, wanting as he did to remain on the mountain. This Peter rings so many bells for me. I'm a middle-aged, 21st century, Western Catholic Christian woman. I bring my history, my culture, and my personal biography to my understanding of the character of Peter, a 1st century male Palestinian Jew. My Peter is not the Peter of scholarly research, yet across the expanse of time and history, in my reading of St. Mark's Gospel, he evokes my sympathy and provokes reflection. Peter, it seemed, is gifted with intuition. Almost without consciously knowing it, he identifies who Jesus is. When I think of his intuition, I'm taken back to my school days, where I got the right answer to a hard sum. Subsequent questioning, however, showed that I had not understood the meaning behind the answer. I remember wanting to be prized for getting the right answer, but how I hated the realization that followed, which indicated that yes, I did get the right answer, but that deeper understanding was missing. And so my sympathy for Peter begins. Maybe Peter is a bit like me, someone who would like the problems in his life to be solved. But Peter's problems were bigger than mine. He lived under an occupying power, a power that charged big taxes even though his income was unpredictable. Perhaps this insecurity meant getting sick was a very big problem. Being born with a disability was a very big problem. Even the weather was a very big problem. So many problems, so few solutions. I wonder what it would be like if into Peter's company stepped someone whom Peter could identify had the capacity to solve all these problems, not to mention all the other demands made on his life. Someone who Peter had witnessed prove this capacity. I know I would be attracted to someone who might offer this possibility, and I can understand why Peter was too. It would be very easy to identify this person as a saviour. All my problems solved, or at least likely to be solved. Yes, I could sign up for membership for his team, and I sense that Peter could too. From Peter's perspective, how easy it would be to see this Jesus of Nazareth as the Messiah who would restore things to their proper order. And hey presto, problem solved. At long last, the right answer. Like any good teacher, however, Jesus was obligated to put before Peter the depth of meaning behind the answer he had given. Yes, Jesus is the Messiah, but a Messiah who is a servant, and moreover a servant who will suffer and die. How hard that statement must have been to Peter's ears. It blew apart any notion of political dominance and any notion of the easy life. But perhaps there is another level in Peter's reaction. Jesus was not only Peter's teacher, but also his very good friend, who, on hearing that their friend was accepting an identity which involved such pain, rejection, and death, would not want to talk him out of it. Maybe this is where I meet Peter. I too know that suffering is at times inevitable, but I balk at accepting it, particularly when it affects close friends and family. I wonder, did Peter feel the depths of his powerlessness to intervene, his powerlessness to argue for a safer path? I also wonder, is the painful recognition of this powerlessness and the subsequent acceptance of it a prerequisite to be a follower of Christ? Perhaps it is only when I begin to give up the illusion of my power to define and control that I am enabled to hope and to trust that all will be well, but not necessarily in the manner of my choosing. Saying it is easy, living it is very challenging. Perhaps, like Peter, I need my moments of transfiguration, those times of consolation when I see the world and those around me with new eyes, where, for a little period of time, I am at peace and know myself to be blessed, where I am capable of hearing the voice from the cloud that says, "This is my Son, the Beloved. Listen to him." The temptation, however, is to stay in that place so that I am safeguarded from the challenges of life, that is, grappling with the identity that Jesus, as the suffering servant, puts before me, and by means of which I am called out. Mark's Gospel is silent about the birth of Jesus. Now, however, I am wondering, is it the identity of Jesus as the suffering servant, presented to us by St. Mark, the prism through which we, in the company of Saints Matthew and Luke, are led to narratives about the origin and birth of Jesus, and from there, after a long period of reflection, to the poem at the beginning of St. John's Gospel?